Bit of a weird game with somewhat mixed emotions yesterday, watching West Ham get smashed by Leverkusen. And smash we did get, the first half especially. The second half was a little bit quieter, tempo was lowered, a lot of substitutions, kills any rhythm, any momentum of the game. So the second half was a bit of a slow burn. It was a difficult game to watch, the second 45. But the first half in particular, Leverkusen were superb. They were all over us. We had absolutely no answer for anything that they had. When they played counter-attacking football, they were fast, they were direct, they were ripping us down their right-hand side, down their left-hand side, and down the middle of the pitch as well. It didn't really matter which direction the Leverkusen counter-attack came from. Our defence couldn't handle it whatsoever. They were all over us. And then when we did go defensive, when we sat on the edge of our box, employed the low block, Leverkusen had answers for that as well. They didn't mind. They said, that's fine, we'll play the quick passing, we'll play the quick 1-2s, we'll play in these tight spaces and get in behind your fullbacks anyway. And they managed it. The first 45 minutes of football from Leverkusen was superb. Now, the reason it was mixed emotions, there was a small glimmer, and when I say a small glimmer, I've had to really remind myself today about that small glimmer of hope, because it was dwindling. At the start of the game, I was thinking, hey, Tim Steidten's project against West Ham, let's see what Leverkusen are all about. Now, I kind of know what they're about. I do watch the Bundesliga. Not loads, I don't watch it relentlessly, but it's the only foreign league I keep up with, really. The French league, Italian league, Spanish, I don't pay attention to any of them. I don't have time, essentially. But when it comes to Bundesliga, I quite enjoy it. I quite enjoy the way football is played in Germany. And that's how they've been playing under Alonso for quite some time now. So while it's only friendly, may be applied to certain aspects of pre-season, that's how Leverkusen play in competitive football. Unfortunately, it's how West Ham play in competitive football as well. But that is what Leverkusen do. That is how Alonso wants them to play and has got them playing as well. But that glimmer of hope was, it's a mini Tim Steidten project. That is what he could potentially build at West Ham if given resources, time and money and backing, essentially. Backing is the important one, possibly, at this point in time. But watching that Leverkusen side, a lot of the players, not all of them, some of them have been brought in this summer since Steidten's left. I would suggest that perhaps, given that he left in March, that you would imagine some of the transfer targets would have been there in March. They would have done a lot of their planning in March time already for the summer, but he was gone by then, so let's not credit him with those signings. But there was certainly enough of Tim Steidten's players in that starting 11 yesterday that played West Ham. Tapsoba at centre-back, Frimpong on the right. You get the idea. It's a mini Tim Steidten project. But perhaps more importantly is the conductor of Xabi Alonso being in the dugout. We know Tim Steidten was a heavy influence on bringing him to Leverkusen and had a close partnership with him. Didn't work together for that long, but when they did, they had a close relationship. And what we were seeing there when Leverkusen were smashing us was Tim Steidten's project, and that was a small glimmer of hope. So I thought, this is the guy that's come to West Ham. And I just hope, if there's one positive to take from that game, and it's probably the only one, surely now, if Sullivan needed any proof to back Tim Steidten, Leverkusen just delivered it to us. And maybe that's what we needed. Maybe long term, yesterday's game will turn out to be good for West Ham United, because maybe, hopefully, yesterday's game will make Sullivan see, actually, if you back Steidten, that's what you can get. You can get that. But not just with the players in the transfer market, but also when it comes to the recruitment of the next manager. As we know, Moyes only got a year left on his contract. Whether he sees that out or not remains to be seen. But let's assume Moyes does get this season. In May he goes, and then next summer we get a new manager in. Hopefully yesterday has given enough evidence to say to David Sullivan, look, let Tim Steidten take control of this. Him and Mark Noble, let them take charge of the next manager of West Ham, or let them start it now. They've essentially got a year to go and identify who they want to be the next manager of West Ham. I hope it's Alonso. I would love Alonso. I know he's just signed a new contract at Leverkusen. I don't really care. There might be clauses in that. We don't know. There might be clauses that if a Premier League club comes knocking, that's how much they pay and he's allowed to go. We don't know. But signing a new deal doesn't really mean anything to me. I think you can still go get him. If you want him, you can still go get him. I'm just not sure you'd get him now. I think if you were to go at the end of the season trying to get a manager out of a club, you might have a chance. But if you go and do it just before the new season starts, I think you're asking a lot of the manager to walk out of his club then. But nevertheless, I'm hoping that yesterday Sullivan got delivered the proof that he needs to allow Tim Steidten to take control, because when I was watching the game yesterday, I was just thinking about transfers and stuff. We'll get onto that in a second. I want to do a little bit of admin really quickly. New t-shirt. Hopefully you've been sitting there thinking, hang on a minute, that's a little bit of a new t-shirt that Gio's got on there. Where's he got that from? Anyway, Irons on Tour on the front. It's got on the back, it's got all the dates and the stadium names and the countries where West Ham played their European games last season on the way to winning the Conference League, because we've got some new merch at our store. We've got a few t-shirt designs and a few coaster designs as well, including these two. Just that one there, it says Irish with the trophy, and then you've got the champions with the trophy in the middle as well. So if you go to hammerschatstore.com, the link's in the description below. There's a page with just the Prague stuff on it as well. If you fancy going and grabbing yourself a new t-shirt, being a little bit nosy, or a new coaster, we've got the Hammerschat coaster, and we've also got our Jared Bowen coaster as well. And while you're there, you can pre-order Tony Gale's autobiography if you wish. Anyone that does pre-order Tony Gale's autobiography with Hammerschat will receive a signed copy. It's out on the 1st of September. But thank you very much to anybody that does go and grab any piece of merchandise. Helps the channel out a lot. And while you're here, please do subscribe. Click the big red button, subscribe, and drop a like on the video. But what I was thinking about transfers, and it goes hand in hand a little bit with the new manager of West Ham, because I've hoped, I'll be honest with you, I've hoped what we would do this transfer window is give Moyes his centre midfielder, give Moyes his defensive midfielder, whoever Moyes wanted, just let him have him, because it's important. It's important that Moyes plays this guy immediately. Like I said, I know we're not going to sign Borges, but had we assigned Borges, I wouldn't expect Moyes to play him immediately, but I don't think there's that pressure on him too, because Benrahma is adequate. He's fine. Benrahma's fine on the left wing, but Downs and Souček is not an adequate partnership. We need the guy that we signed from the middle of the pitch to go straight into that starting 11. So we need Moyes to put him straight in. But then when I was looking, I've argued the points in the last few weeks, I think Moyes has signed 22 players at West Ham. Only 8 of them were signed from a Premier League club, and one of those was Emerson, who was signed from a Premier League club in Chelsea, but spent the previous 2 seasons out on loan away from the Premier League. But 8 players were signed, so the majority of his signings don't come from the Premier League, and David Moyes will put them in. Like I said, Soufal, Bowen, Souček, Agerd, Scamacca, Paqueta, he's happy to put them straight in if he believes they're good enough. But there is a bit of a sort of stumbling block, if you like, as to what's going on. But Moyes, I wanted him to get his centre midfielder and sort of Steidten do the rest. The left back, let Steidten go get the next left back, because Moyes is happy with Emerson, so let Steidten go get the left back in that can compete with Emerson and hopefully take his place, hopefully be better than Emerson. That's up to Steidten. When we go get an attacking midfielder, we go get a striker, go let Steidten do the recruitment of that position. Now, the club have also been doing a bit of work in the last few days to try and put out positive PR about Moyes and Steidten. There's been a few articles in the last couple of weeks that actually they're getting on really well and they've been going to games together and stuff. So I think the club are starting to now reverse the PR machine that's been going on in the last week or so. And I know some West Ham fans that were at the European Awards ceremony on Thursday, and they were saying that Moyes and Steidten were next to each other, getting on really, really well. And I don't think anyone's disputed. I don't think I've seen a story that they hate each other or that. I've not seen a story that they dislike each other personally. It's just that they disagree on who to buy. Now, both can still be true. Steidten and Moyes can still get on really, really well, but just disagree on which player that they wish to sign. But what's important is who we do go buy this summer is essentially usable by the next manager. And that's why I'm not too... When it comes to likes of Ward-Prowse or Polinia, I know we won't get Polinia, but just bear with me here. The next manager, whoever it is, could probably use that player. That Ward-Prowse can play under various different managers and various different ways of playing. He's not a specialist. He can only play one style of football. Like Antonio, for example, if you're not playing counter-attacking football, I think you'd struggle to get the best out of Antonio. If you were to put him in a team that plays differently to the way David Moyes plays, I think Antonio would struggle in that side. So the next manager alone may not be able to utilise Michail Antonio. But what's important, I think, is that we've almost got a little bit of a long-term plan here this summer, which is which type of manager are we even going after next summer? Because if we do end up backing David Moyes to the hilt, which is Ward-Prowse, Scott McTominay, Amanda Broya, we go get those. Well, I've seen a link to Solanke, for God's sake. I mean, he's an all right player, but Solanke no, thank you. But if let's just say we went and got Solanke, Ward-Prowse, Scott McTominay, I think you're putting yourself under a bit of pressure as a club to almost, when you go get a new manager, the manager is then going to have to play a similar way to the David Moyes played, because you've assembled a David Moyes style playing squad. Does that make sense? I hope this is making sense. It makes sense in my head when I sat down and do this video, but I'm a bit rough today. I went out last night, and hangovers are getting a little bit tougher as you get a little bit older, I've realised. Normally I used to get up and be a little bit of water and I'm ready to rock and roll my day. Not anymore. It's tougher. It's tougher as I'm getting on a little bit. Just been watching the Community Shield, or I still call it the Charity Shield. I was watching the Charity Shield, nodding off and everything. Anyway, so hopefully it's making sense. My point is, if we're going to build a squad for David Moyes this summer, I think you're putting yourself under pressure to go get a David Moyes style manager in a year's time, or if you have to dismiss David Moyes during the season, it's even tougher, because then the manager doesn't have a transfer window to move on players that doesn't suit his style and bring those in. You're then really restricting yourself if come November time, or heaven forbid February, even worse, after the January transfer window, you then need to go get a new manager. You're probably going to have to go get someone that plays the way that David Moyes plays in order to get the best out of the players that you've just signed in this transfer window. Hopefully that's making sense, and it gives me a little bit of worry, really, because it's a difficult thing to balance. So what do? Do you go and buy players to give to David Moyes now and say go have a really good season, or do you buy players for the next manager, whoever that might be? You don't even know yet, but you go buying players for a new style, but then you're essentially handcuffing David Moyes, and we know this isn't really the player for you. It's a bit like the Scamacca thing. Scamacca is the perfect piece of evidence, really, the perfect example, because you won't convince me. While Moyes did put him in pretty much straight away, I think he was on the bench for the first 2 or 3 games, then he started, and he continued to start all the games. And we're talking Premier League here, not Conference League, until he got injured, and then he disappeared for the second half of the season. But Scamacca is a perfect example of, if you go buy a player that's a really good player, but he doesn't fit the way the manager plays, Moyes may still play him. It just doesn't work. It doesn't get the best out of the player. It doesn't work for the team. And it's a recipe for disaster, really. And I don't know what the obvious solution is. Well, actually, I feel like I do. I think I know what I would like to see, but that's not going to happen. But I'm trying to almost guess how West Ham are going to go about this transfer window. I say go about it. We've done nothing so far, have we? For the remainder of the transfer window, how we're going to go about it. I still feel the Ward-Prowse one will happen. I think Alvarez will happen as well. So Alvarez, Ward-Prowse, that's your midfield sorted. But you've got Scamacca leaving. We were after Carlos Borges, so do we need a winger, or were we simply buying a player because he was available and we thought it was a really good player, so let's just bring him in and we'll work it out from there, kind of thing. We've got Aaron Creswell on strike, so we're going to need a left back, because I don't want to see Ben Johnson as the second choice left back, I'm afraid. But again, what do? Do you say to Dave Moyes, which left back do you want, or do you go to Tim Steidten and say, you go get him, go get your 22-year-old or whatever that can sit on a bench for a season? He doesn't need to play this season because Emerson's good enough. And I think that's probably the right balance. I think allowing Moyes to pick his centre midfielders, but letting Steidten do the rest of the purchasing in the transfer window is probably the way to go. But I do think it's got to be done with an eye on the next manager. And I just hope that yesterday's defeat, yesterday's thrashing at Leverkusen, if there's anything positive to come out of it, I just hope that it's just persuaded David Sullivan to take control of this situation at the minute and start deciding who to back with which players, because it does feel like when we've been bidding for David Moyes as a player, until that £30 million bid for Ward-Prowse, by the way, every other bid has been really low. And I know you go in low and work your way, I get it, but to bid 20 million for Harry Maguire is just to bid 20 million for 17 million plus 3 million of add-ons for Ward-Prowse. There's bidding low, then there's taking the piss. There's making bids that you know has got absolutely no chance at all. And I think the Maguire one and the Ward-Prowse one is certainly the latter. There was no way we were going to be signing those players for those prices. So is it because it was part of negotiations, or does Sullivan just not really want to sign them? Does he just not really want to back David Moyes? Well, if that's the case, have a bit of bollocks and tell your manager you're not going to back him. Say, no, you're not getting him. We don't think he's good value. Who else do you want? James Ward-Prowse, you can 30 million, that's the maximum, then we're out of here. We need to start doing stuff. We played Bournemouth on Saturday, and while there was a positive to come out of yesterday's game, which is hopefully that's what West Ham can look like in 24 months' time, we'll have to wait and see. But in order for that to happen, Steidten needs control, more control, and we're going to need a new manager, a different manager. But for the short term, while that was a small positive, there was a huge worry. And while I've said that Leverkusen was the one that you'll see this season in the Bundesliga, that West Ham is probably the West Ham you're going to see this season in the Premier League as well. And that's a massive worrying thing, and it completely overshadowed any small glimmer. And I did say it was small, but like I said the other day, when I was talking about Paqueta responding to the fake news, it's scraping the barrel for positivity. I'm aware it is. But that's all we've got at the minute. We don't really have much else. We have to look for positivity. It doesn't just fall into our lap at the minute. Whereas the bad stuff, the rumours and stuff like that, it's there. There's loads of it. But anyway, when I was, like I said, today I've got over it was a friendly. I've got over the defeat already. Yesterday I wasn't too happy about it. I'm over it now. But I still carry, while I'm over the game, the fear for Bournemouth on Saturday is still lingering this morning. But like I said, I'm trying to focus on the positivities, which is, that was a Steidten project we just got thumped by. And if he's allowed time, money and control, that is what we can look like in a couple of seasons' time. We need to get a little bit of luck, by the way. We need to get a little bit lucky too. But it's possible. They just showed us. 45 minutes, Leverkusen showed us what we can be in 2-3 seasons' time at West Ham United, if Steidten's allowed. Anyway, that's it. I'm going to disappear. Get your Prague merch. Hammerschatstore.com. Links in the description below. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new around here. Catch up with you tomorrow.